quite frankly, I don't want to make this video. And I have played around with the idea of just not talking about this. But to do so would just be to allow them to get away with it. So here we are. On the 7th of January, a week into 2026, a mother was shot dead by ICE agents. Not even agents, an ICE agent. One guy. A masked thug. Working for law enforcement for the immigration agency of the US. A mother was shot dead. Why? No reason. Quite literally. Renee Nicole Good was shot in the head by an ICE agent because she was filming on her phone while in her vehicle on what would otherwise be considered public or, non-private property, while they were raiding daycares, schools, preschools, and various other places. ICE killed an unarmed mother. I don't know what else to say about it. She was murdered by law enforcement. And let's be honest here, for the last year, that hasn't been anything new. But the way in which the Republicans and even the Democrats, in a lot of cases, have just pushed it aside, treated it as if it's nothing, that their law enforcement, immigration as they may be, killed a woman in broad daylight with no cause, with no reason, with no possible threat. They shot her in the head and prevented a doctor from attempting to help her. The FBI, the DOJ, ICE, all these different high-ranking levels of law enforcement in the US killed a woman, prevented her from getting any help, medical attention, anything like that, and then continue to threaten more and more people while saying they have done nothing wrong, while the President of the United States calls them agitators, calls the witnesses of this murder agitators. Calls the murdered woman disorderly, obstructing, and resisting. A child is orphaned because of these ICE agents. She was a mother to a 6-year-old who was in school at the time and had previously lost his father in 2023. ICE just created an orphan. And not through their typical ways of creating orphans, where they split up a family by sending someone who may not have been from the US originally to some random country. No, they murdered the mother. I really need that to be clear in what I'm saying. ICE, without any reason, without any cause, without any legal obligation, murdered a mother and created an orphan. And you may be thinking, well, at least the Democrats will be, saying that it's the wrong thing, that it's a bad thing. That would be so very naive. Because Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, which, if you don't know, Minneapolis is a city in Minnesota, and the pick for the Democrat VP during the last election, you may remember, threatened protesters with police involvement when they took to the streets. When they started protesting the existence of ICE in their city and the fact that an ICE agent murdered a woman in broad daylight, he threatened them with the same form of violence that they were protesting. Democratic governor. Tim Walz is a disgusting individual. And the fact that I was so much in support and so pro him during the previous election, despite not being a US citizen myself, I feel honestly insulted, and I feel like the people of Minnesota should also feel absolutely disgusted and insulted by their governor. Because this is insane. A federal agent, an ICE agent, murdered a constituent of Minnesota, of Tim Walz, in broad daylight, on camera. And Tim Walz threatens those who want to protest that action, want to protest the fact that ICE is murdering just regular, everyday people, innocent people. Tim Walz threatens violence. Whether intentionally or not, but I doubt he's this dumb. All while all the regular talking heads continue to point out how this murdered woman had pronouns in her bio on Instagram and called herself a poet and whatever woke nonsense they seem to have an issue with. ICE didn't murder this woman because she was woke, or whatever they want to say. ICE didn't murder her because she's a poet or she has pronouns in her bio or anything like that. They murdered her because they could. They murdered her because they had the opportunity to. And because they know, as is very clear at this point, that they can do what they want and get away with it. I hate having to talk about this kind of stuff. And it really makes me hate living in the world that I do. And there are a lot of things happening right now that I have not spoken about, that I have ignored, that I have just sat back and let others discuss. But there's a point where I can't just let it go. I was at work when I heard about this, and I kind of shut down reading it and seeing the clips, hearing some of the audio, and hearing some of the absolutely horrific reporting that is being done by the far-right media apparatus. And further to then see Democrats defend the actions of ICE. There is no hope for the United States of America. That much is true. That much has been true for the last year. 1 year under Trump, and the entire country, all sides of the political spectrum, has fallen to Nazism, has fallen to fascism, and most horrifically of all, has fallen victim to just complete and utter disinterest in the people of its own country. immigrant, citizen, native, it doesn't matter. They will, and I mean this, they will kill anyone. It no longer matters what your political leaning is even. They will kill anyone to further their agenda, to further their goals. And the fact is, Renee Nicole Good is not going to be the last. And that's really all I can say. I'm sorry this is another preachy one. I know this is another long, almost aimless ramble about the horrors that are ongoing. But, as I've already said, I simply couldn't let this one go. So stay safe out there. If you are in Minnesota or Minneapolis, please stay safe. Schools are closed for the next 2 days, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be closed for even longer. And beyond all that, look after yourselves. Because you don't know when some jackbooted thug is going to ruin your life or end it. And unfortunately, that's where I have to leave this. So, thanks for joining me for this, and I'll see you in what is hopefully going to be a slightly more upbeat video, probably tomorrow.